Hey YouTube, it's Matthew Decker, Leverage Wealth Management. I've had several questions in the last couple weeks on backdoor Roth conversions, and so we are going to be tackling that in this short video. So why in the world are we talking about backdoor Roth IRAs? Well, the reason that I feel like we're getting several questions on backdoor Roth IRAs is because there have been a couple news articles about Congress's intent to essentially kill the backdoor Roth IRA. So this was actually a CNN article from, I believe, late last year. Congress wants to kill the backdoor Roth IRA, and here's what it means for you. And not only is the media jumping on this idea of killing the backdoor Roth IRA, but it's also relatively obvious that our government is going to continue to spend money, and that's going to continue with the Build Back Better framework and every other spending endeavor that's going to come over the next 5 to 10, 15, 20 years. The long and short of it is the government needs tax revenue. And Roth IRAs are a way for normal, average people like you and me to save money and not have to pay taxes on the gains. And that is a difficult thing for the government to stomach, especially when there are loopholes for high income earners. And so let me explain that a little bit more. You probably already know that once you reach a certain amount of income, let's say that you're married filing jointly, the government's going to phase you out of your ability to contribute to a traditional Roth IRA. And that phase-out limit, if you're married filing jointly, starts at $196,000, and at $206,000 or over $206,000, you can't contribute to a Roth IRA, a traditional Roth IRA, at all. In fact, the only way that you can get money into an IRA if you're married filing jointly, making over $206,000 a year, is contributing in a company Roth 401k or doing Roth conversions, or this idea of the backdoor Roth conversion. Those are your only options. And so that's why we get a lot of questions about it, because high earners are continually looking for ways to invest money, take some risk, and not have to give a third of it away to the government once they ultimately do sell and cash in or use that investment as income. And so the Roth IRA is probably the best vehicle that you can take lots of risk in and not get killed on taxes. In fact, it is the best vehicle where you can take a ton of risk and be rewarded for that risk in the form of higher returns and yet not have to pay taxes on that money when you withdraw it in the future. Because of that, the government doesn't like it for high earners, because who can put a lot of money into a Roth IRA? Well, it's the people that have a lot of discretionary income. And if the people with a lot of discretionary income start investing the majority of their dollars in tax-free vehicles, what does that mean for the government? It means less tax revenue. And so they've come up with limitations on how much you can make in order to contribute to one of these Roth accounts. And at $206,000, or more, the only way you can get Roth accounts is by doing a 401k at work, a Roth 401k at work, or converting traditional IRA dollars that you already have set aside. And so the backdoor Roth was born. So what is the backdoor Roth? Well, the backdoor Roth is actually very simple. For those that are above the Roth income limits, it's a very simple process. You open a traditional IRA. You contribute money to that IRA, and typically it's a non-deductible contribution. So you make a non-deductible contribution to an IRA where you are not taking a tax deduction. And then once you make that contribution to that non-deductible IRA, you then convert it to a Roth account. And so it has the same basic contribution limitations that a traditional IRA would have, $6,000 with an additional $1,000 catch-up in 2022. And so it's a way for people that are making a decent income over that $206,000 threshold to contribute to a non-deductible traditional IRA and then convert that into a Roth account. And we've got some steps here that I just pulled from the Motley Fool because I thought that they did a good job outlining it. And we'll just go through it one by one. So you open a traditional IRA. Typically, it's going to be a non-deductible contribution that you make. You contribute the money to that traditional IRA. you typically will not invest that money until you decide to convert it to your Roth account. So it's a relatively straightforward process. You're making a non-deductible contribution to a traditional IRA, and then you're going to convert it into a Roth account at some point down the road. Now, there is something that you need to know, and that is this idea of a Prorata Rule. So if you already have IRA accounts, and I want to be very specific because I don't want any of you to get into trouble from a tax standpoint. When I say an IRA account, I don't mean a 401k. I mean an IRA, an individual retirement account. If you have an IRA account already where you have made deductible contributions to that IRA account, there will be some tax consequences when you convert to Roth, even if you make non-deductible contributions, because you don't get to pick and choose which part of your IRA you convert. And so they will do a very simple calculation. How much have you paid in that was non-deductible, and how much have you paid in that was deductible? And then you will pay taxes essentially on the ratio of non-deductible contributions to deductible contributions. And so if you're reading between the lines, there actually is a way to get Roth conversions done in these backdoor accounts without paying taxes. And the way that you would be able to do that is if you did not have any other IRA accounts and all of your qualified money was held in an employer 401k, then you could open up one traditional IRA, and it would be the only one that you had. You would make a non-deductible contribution to that IRA. You would not invest the dollars, you'd keep it in cash, and then you would convert it to Roth. And since what you're converting was not deducted in the first place, there's no taxable consequences for that conversion. But that only applies to people that don't have other IRA accounts where you have made deductible contributions. And I would also add, if you had a 401k from a previous employer that you rolled into a traditional IRA, you're going to get caught up in that Prorata Rule. So just be aware of that. But aside from this idea of this backdoor Roth conversion, the other reason that we get a lot of questions about these backdoor Roths is because a lot of times people are looking for higher deferral limits. You know, $6,000 plus the $1,000 for the catch-up if you're over 50. That's not a ton of money per year if you're a high income earner and you're looking to eventually supplement a relatively large income in retirement. That backdoor Roth conversion is not a ton of money on a yearly basis. And so where we end up steering a lot of people is towards index universal life insurance policies. And if you haven't looked at index universal life insurance policies, or you've never done a comparison to an index universal life to a Roth IRA, I'd encourage you to do that. Or you can watch the video that I've already done on it. And so I'll link that in the description below, and I'll put a little call out card up top to that index universal life versus Roth IRA video. You should watch that. It's relatively eye-opening. If you're not willing to take tons of risk, the IUL is more than likely going to outpace the Roth IRA. But I would encourage you, if this is a concept that you are trying to explore, or if you want to know if this concept of a backdoor Roth or an index universal life insurance policy for tax-free income is right for you, go to our website, leveragewm.com/contact-us. You can fill out a question form, and we'll get back to you with either a time that we can spend 15, 20 minutes to chat about it, or we might just have an answer for you based on how complicated your question is. But hopefully this has been helpful. I think there's no better time to start accumulating tax-free dollars. So whether we're talking about Roth accounts, Roth 401k, a backdoor Roth, an index universal life insurance policy, a Roth annuity, it doesn't matter. If it is a tax-free account, man, even municipal bonds, I think there is no better time to start accumulating tax-free dollars than right now, especially knowing how much money our government has spent the last 2 decades and how much they're going to continue to spend the next 2 decades. Tax revenue is lower than it needs to be just from a simple math standpoint. And if you have a ton of tax deferred dollars, IRAs, 401ks, SEPs, Simples, 403bs, TSPs, all of that money is fully taxable at ordinary income rates when you take it out. And so, man, if there was ever a time to start building up tax-free piles of money, it's now, when tax rates are about as low as they've ever been, and yet the future of tax rates, looks relatively bleak. So hopefully this has been helpful. Like this video, subscribe to my channel so you can be up to date on all the future content that we put out. If you have a question, you can go to our website, leveragewm.com/contact-us. You can fill out that form. It'll shoot an email to me, and we'll get back to you with either a time where we can chat or we may have an answer for you right out of the gate. This has been Matthew Decker, Leveraged Wealth. Until next time.